is the Vintage RPG Podcast, your source for the best in classic and contemporary RPGs. With your hosts, Hambone and Stu.
Welcome to Vintage RPG Podcast, coming at you again from the clubhouse, hidden somewhere in the swamps of New Jersey. I'm John Hambone McGuire, and with me, as always, on this snowy day in New Jersey is the founder and publisher of Unwinnable, Stu Horvath. Today, we've got a very, very cool guest, someone I've been waiting to talk to for a long time. Brian Colin is here to talk about his upcoming Kickstarter for Sqwürmish, a vast, grim sci-fi skirmish game and miniatures. Hey, Brian, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing fantastic. Thanks so much for having me. It's really cool to be on here, especially after listening to so many episodes.
Thank you so much for listening. It's been cool for us, doing it so long. Quick sidebar, Stu, did you have a snow day today?
I did have a snow day today.
There's no snow on the ground.
Well, yeah, because I shoveled it already.
Yeah, fair play. So, Brian, tell our listeners, because this is a sci-fi skirmish game for your already amazing property, Vast Grimm. So why don't you tell our listeners, before we dive into Sqwürmish, a little bit more about what Vast Grimm is all about?
So Vast Grimm is a rules-light sci-fi horror RPG set in a universe on the brink of collapse. Almost everybody has been infected by one of 6 different strains of parasitic worms. It's bizarre, weird, over the top. It's pretty gross and goofy. It's been called, like, if you took Guardians of the Galaxy and threw it in an alien movie, is a short way to kind of get people's minds into what it is.
That's a great elevator pitch. That is a great elevator pitch. And, listeners, if you're looking to get into it, I will tell you there are already... How many years have you been doing this?
So my friend Ross and I started creating it just over 4 years ago. We launched the original crowdfunding campaign in June after starting to write on it in December, but then it didn't actually come out in physical form till September of, that would be 2022. Yeah. But since then, I've done 6 additional supplement books. There's a skeleton crew version of the rules on my creature curation website, so you can get the black and white version, just download it for free and start playing. Have an online character generator. There's a couple adventures that are free. There's the one that's in the back of the Skeleton Crew book and a couple other.
It's very cool. And especially as a creator myself and as a person who likes to buy into new RPGs, knowing that if you love something, which you're going to love it. I love it. It's awesome that there's a lot of already made, ready to go additional material you can buy, additional adventures and stuff and supplements for the world. I mean, that's cool. It really does help you stay in something that you love so much. Now, this, though, is something a little different than what you're doing with your Vast Grimm. Tell us about Sqwürmish.
Sure. So my son, a couple of years ago, we went to a local gaming convention called Southern Fried Gaming Expo, and he played a skirmish game called High Noon, which is like what you would expect. It's a Western shoot 'em up game. And I played that a lot with him. And then he started getting into Marvel Crisis Protocol and started playing that. And then I realized on my bookshelf of many books, I had a couple of Forbidden Psalms books, and those are a hack of Morkborg that's a skirmish game. It uses very similar mechanics to Morkborg, and Vast Grimm is a hack of Morkborg. So I was like, let me try this, because I like funny shaped dice more than I do the other dice, and I like stuff that leans a little more towards my RPG sensibilities. So we played some of that, and once we played that, I was like, well, why don't I just do Forbidden Psalm in the Vast Grimm setting? And that's how Sqwürmish came about. I started working on writing it. I had, it was on my list of projects to do for probably about a year and a half. And then I was already starting to write it. And Brian Shutter got sat next to me. Our tables were next to each other at Granite State Comic Con in New Hampshire. And we were talking, and he started showing me the minis for that he was having done for Neon Lords. And then Saul came to the convention, and he also brought some of the minis for Roller Brawl.
Oh yeah.
And so saw those, thought they were cool, and then I ran into them again at Gamehole Con and talked some more. And then after that, I was like, well, hey, Saul, would you have any time or interest? Because he had picked up Vast Grimm at Granite State. I was like, would you have any interest in making minis for this? And he was like, yes. So Sqwürmish is minis agnostic, but having the opportunity to make all the character classes and monsters that are in the core RPG book and put them into Sqwürmish was something like, okay, cool. I get all these to put on my shelf and play with my own little figures.
Yeah, it's a dangerous thing to sit next to Brian Shutter at a convention. That's how you end up 3 books deep with the guy.
Right.
Trust me.
I know. Yeah. We kept bouncing things back and forth. I mean, we have a board game that we are going to start working on in October together where we combine the two universes, pit them against one another. And we're actually introducing that concept a little bit because he's a stretch goal on Sqwürmish, where some of his faction comes into the Vasgrim universe.
Yeah, and I can tell you from experience, I do have the inside baseball here because Brian and I every day we're bouncing ideas off each other, and we work together on some projects. And he's like, "Is this cool?" Vibe check. And so I've seen a lot of what he's done for that stretch goal book, and like, holy shit,
Yes.
it really does encapsulate the best of both worlds. Like the book is still very uniquely what Brian Shutter does,
Yes.
and for the world he's built with Neon Lords, but also it is so aware and so ingratiated in what you're doing that it's like peanut butter jelly time. Two
Right.
great tastes that go great
Tastes
together.
great together. Yep. Totally.
Tell me more about these worms.
Yes. So there are 6 different worms. There's a brain worm, there's a heart worm, there's a gut worm, there's a spinal worm, there's a flesh worm. I'm missing one. Well, anyway, so in the RPG, if you get infected, because most of a lot of people or monsters have these worms inside of them because they've become infected. And if you interact with them, like if you're in melee combat or something like that, and you happen to get infected, every day you have to make a toughness test. If you pass the toughness test, that day you have a parasitic pleasure, where the worm inside of you is working with you and you roll on the parasitic pleasure table for that specific worm. If you fail, you have a parasitic pain, and the worm is not working with you, and you have some horrific things. There's a chance in the parasitic pains that you will roll it where you become one of the Grimm, one of the alien hive mind zombie-like species, and the worm takes over your body, and you give your character to the GM, and that's it. You got to start with somebody new. There's also a chance that the worm does not like your body. It's not a good host for them anymore, and they will jump out of you, maybe like bursting through your stomach, causing some long-term damage, but they're going to find something else to live in.
Now, you said that everyone, all the troops in the skirmish game are all naturally infested.
No, not necessarily. There are like rebreather masks that you can wear that reduce the chance of you getting infected. So a lot of the things, depending, there's 4 different factions that you can play in the game, and some of them, each scenario in it has specific objectives. But at the end of the scenario, say you're playing harvesters, those are people that go and try and get worms out of fallen people, like fallen troops and things like that, and sell them on the black market. So if they're able to use tools and harvest the worms in between scenarios, they get extra credits to go to their account to upgrade their hideout and things like that based on what they did on top of the goal of the scenario.
I'm glad that we got to harvesting worms naturally because I was going to ask about that next.
I mean, I talk about it all the time.
No, I'm just like skimming through the the PDF, and I'm just like, ooh, worm extraction tool. That sounds horrible.
Yes.
And that's the kind of cool thing about this. It's like, first off, parasitic pleasure. I don't know about you, Stu, but I definitely feel like I've like danced to something that sounded like that at either Aldo's or QXT's at some point in my wayward 20s.
I don't want to think too much about the combination of those two words. It is yicky. The game is yicky, but it's yicky in like a giggly kind of way.
Yes.
It's a very interesting line to. I mean, especially after we talked to the Glumdark fella last week, and
Awesome.
it was so they're very. It's interesting that there's so many ways to stick the landing that is sort of on the line between silly and gross. yet still be different from each other. Like this is like a different like this is a little bit more giggly, and like Club Dark is a little bit more snorting laughter. I don't know.
Yes.
Like they're different.
Yeah, I think mine is very B movie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It's a very hyper stylized type of violence that I
Yeah.
think, harkens back to when people weren't afraid of using brighter colors when they were trying to instill fear.
Mm.
So I think that like the way that you go with this and the way that you've approached Fast Scrim and the way that you're approaching this, like to me, is very cool because when you think about the style of story and the style of adventure and the gameplay, it would be very easy just to nestle into like an Alien or like a very specific like dark sci-fi. But I think by going in the opposite direction, like what makes Vast Grim shine, what makes something like Sqwürmish like really pop out and stand is that it is, while it's very dangerous, it's fun and exciting.
I feel like the
Thank
film
you.
set is if this was like a 90s B movie, I feel like there would have to be vats of like neon Nickelodeon slime
Oh,
on hand
100%.
at all times.
Yes.
Do you find writing this stuff that you push it too far and then go, oh no, I got to pull that back, or do you have a really like fine-tuned sense? Like, are you nailing like the balance between gross and silly?
For some people, it may go a little too far, but I try and just be like, who was I at 13? And don't be like, I know I'm 48, but really I'm 13. I think that's part of why I've stuck with this whole universe for so long and doing so much in it. It's where I came into who I was, and this is just a real extension of me. So no, it's just dumb teenage fart jokes, and that 90s-ish aesthetic of, wow, I rode skateboards, but I couldn't do any tricks, but I rode it to get from point A to point B.
Yeah. How old's your son?
He is 15, and my daughter is 11.
How do they feel about the game?
They love it. I mean, my son goes to PAX Unplugged and GameholeCon and helps work my booth, and my daughter's ready to start doing that sort of thing. Like, I know a lot of times when you raise kids, they end up doing the opposite of what you're into, and they're totally like they're into RPGs and board games, and yeah, so they have accepted my creepy, weird sensibilities.
I was wondering if they were like, Dad, come on, does it have to be this goopy? Like, just like dial it down, Dad.
No, and like especially working on Vast Grim like 4 years ago, 3 years ago they were playing. So like I had a 7-year-old and a 12-year-old playing, and like one of the other parents was playing, and they ended up being like not realizing that they were one of the people that wanted the universe to end. They were one of the devout cultists, and they ended up sacrificing like 4 kids to a giant worm at the end of the adventure, and all the kids died. So yeah, they're used to my shenanigans at this point,
From the mouths of babes, right?
right?
What a way to go, man. Like the authority figure being like, all right, well, into the oven.
Yeah, my nephew really didn't like it. He's like, but couldn't we have done this? Or like, couldn't I have done this differently? And it's like, no, you're just dead.
Must have made Thanksgiving that year real awkward.
Right?
Yeah,
This was Thanksgiving. That was the Thanksgiving game after the dinner.
That's
my
right.
God. Yeah, I will say, yeah, I met your kid at PAX. Awesome. And like just so engaged, and you could like tell they were excited like to be doing it and like happy to be doing it. It wasn't just like,
Yep.
oh God, Dad's making me mow the lawn again. It's like, no, it's like, they're talking to people, they're selling people
Right.
on the thing because like they believe in it, not just because like you're their dad, because you could tell they actually enjoyed it,
Yeah.
know?
And also getting to go to Philly and go to Chinatown and getting to go to dim sum and hot pot and like all the things that we live in a small town in West Georgia where there just isn't unless you go up into Atlanta, there isn't that cultural diversity in cuisine that we like to try.
I love the fact that your kids are into it, but I find like a perverse wish that there was a world where like something like this was like mowing the lawn for some teenager somewhere.
Yep. A horrible, horrible multiverse that we go step into.
It's like, God, Dad, I don't want a weird beard.
Yeah, I kind of feel like, your kid getting into it on the ground floor, like you're gonna sidestep that whole like, oh my God, my kid like doesn't think I'm cool anymore. It's like, no, I do this with my dad. And like, all my nerd friends, they come together like, oh, his dad's the guy who creates things. Dad, all you are is an accountant. Great.
Yes. And I started a local RPG night at a brewery that's like we can walk to from my house. So like last night we had 3 tables full of people,
Awesome.
and
Wow.
my son comes to that. My daughter hasn't started coming to that yet, but maybe in the future.
So this is pretty cool. Like I'm looking at the Kickstarter right now. I've been looking through the playtest material, which is great. I always love an early backer bonus that's like something like a ring, you know?
Well, I mean, so Saul was sculpting the Turgis worm, which is the spine worm. It's also the
Yeah.
one that I sculpted the big physical piece that's on the cover of the Core Vast Grim book. And I saw just the head, and I was like, oh, that would like thinking like I don't know if you've seen any of John Popson's metal rings that he does for Gary Con,
Oh yeah.
but as soon as I saw just the head with no other piece that Saul sent me, I was like, oh God, that would be an awesome ring.
Yeah, I mean it brings me like right back to being a kid and finding like the decoder ring in the cereal
Right.
box. Except this one is like real nasty looking, and if you punch someone, it would definitely leave a weird mark. Like the cops would know it was you for
Yeah.
sure.
Yep.
But I mean, like besides like the books, you start off with like an 8 pack of minis, but it looks like 57 minis in total you could potentially unlock.
Yes. The idea is like I wanted 8. So there's 8 character classes in the core RPG book, and I wanted to have an 8 pack of that, but then I also wanted to have a variation, just in case somebody doesn't really feel like, you know what, that man-sheen doesn't look like what I want it to be. Or and then also there's about 16 monsters in the core book between the actual like bestiary in the back and then sprinkled into the adventure that's in it. And a couple more monsters that I wanted specifically for the scenarios that I was writing to be new to this, so it's not just stuff that people may have seen before. And then creating an 8 pack of raiders because raiders tend to be pretty, space pirates are pretty common in a lot of the adventures if you're using it in the RPG side, having more of those in different poses with different weapons. And then an 8 pack of Grim that are just different poses and slightly different clothing, just so that like if you want a horde of alien zombies, you can have them at your table or in Sqwürmish for some of the scenarios. So those are the main ones, along with the Neon Lords 8 pack, and then we have a couple other bigger minis that are further down that aren't even listed in the 57.
Wow. And you also have it looks like here a paint pack as well.
Yeah, going to conventions and meeting people like you and other folks, you make friends. And like Turbo Dork, they're metallic color shifting paints, and there's like we were next to each other at Gamma last year, and they were calling it like the Neon Punk Alley because their booth colors are very, very similar aesthetic.
Yeah.
So I reached out to them. I was like, hey, could we do something where we package some of the paints together? These are the colors that I really love that are part of what I do. And so I'm gonna take 5 of their colors, make an exclusive mini that's a variant, like without a face mask and with different weapon, and package that. And we can't redo the labels because of like testing and things that need to be done, but we're going to rebrand the packaging and do a Grimdork package. So it's a mashup of the two.
Awesome.
And it's crazy. Grimdork.com was available when I was first talking to it. So it's like, all right, now I own Grimdork because
It's amazing. It's like that whole thing with like the Killers, the band popping up when they did How Long It Took. Like, how is Grimdork still available as a domain? That seems like a failure on Warhammer's part.
I think probably because I do it with 2 M's.
Oh, okay.
That could be it.
Yeah, but to that point, like there are shockingly so much stuff that's still available, like
I mean, I have a long list of domains that I have to renew every year. And that's for stuff I actually create, like have things that I've created. So the idea of going and just kind of sitting on a bunch of other domains, I mean, you could have a pretty hefty bill at the end of each year.
oh,
Oh,
I
yeah.
know. I know that. I know that. I think I pay like $140 a year just to keep like a bunch of domains that
Yeah.
like I could finally let go of some of them, but I'm like, oh God, I gotta every year it's like ding, ding, ding. And it's just to be able to go to a link tree. You know what I mean? It's
Right.
not
Yeah.
not ideal.
So I have for a long time, well, I've always been like, no, miniatures are just like not for me. And then I started painting miniatures and I'm like, oh no, painting miniatures is amazing. And now I've painted a whole lot of miniatures and I've gotten to the point where I'm just sort of like, what should I do something with these miniatures? And after many, many, many years of being like, I'm never going to play miniature war game or, skirmish games ever. It's a hard line in the sand.
Right.
I'm looking at doing um, miniature war games and skirmishes. I picked up Hobgoblin recently, but and I've been thinking about grabbing Forbidden Psalms, but maybe I'll go with this. How does Forbidden Psalm work? Like can you? I've not looked at it, so I don't really know
Sure.
the core of the experience, and I'm sure that our listeners don't either.
Yeah. So I've modeled mine very much after theirs, where you have a warband of 5 characters. It's kind of like if you've played any D20 type of RPG, your characters are just kind of stripped down versions of that. So you have 5 characters. There's scenarios in the book where you can play solo, where the scenario has goals like you need to exhume 3 corpses to take back to the Mad Wizard for this. Um, and if you're playing solo or co-op or versus, you roll initiative to lay out bits of terrain if that's part of the scenario setup, and then you roll initiative each round for who's going to play a model first. So of your 5 characters, and they use the word. So this is all very new to me. I've always been on the RPG side. They call everything's a model.
Mhm.
So and that seems consistent across places. So you play a model, you make an action, or you make a movement, and your movement always comes first. And each character has a different movement. It's based on one of your abilities plus a modifier, and that's how many inches you can move
Okay.
that round. And then you take an action. And then the other person goes, then you go, then the other person goes, and actions can be attacks or picking up stuff and looting, things like that. And then the the monsters go, right?
Okay.
And so the monsters are going to do certain things, like if they can visually see something that is not of their type. Like if it's a wolf and they see the other wolves, they're not going to attack the other wolves. But if they see a human or a gorilla, whatever is closest, they're going to do their thing. And they're going to have a movement and an attack as well. And then in each scenario, it's written out like on round 3, put X num D4 wolves out and put them on side A and side B, or randomly roll a side for which side they're going to be on. And then generally, if you're playing multiplayer, if there's multiple ones, each person would take turns deciding where they're going to go. So it's not like, oh, they're all going to go against Stu, ha 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 ha, right? And usually they also have like each scenario has a certain number of rounds. Like after 6 rounds, it's done whether or not you've succeeded or failed the objective.
And the resolution mechanics are all derived from Merkborg.
Oh yes, yes. So most
Okay.
resolutions are you roll a d20, hit a 12 or higher, you're going to succeed.
Wow. Okay. So that's pretty cool. Now, like how elaborate does the board have to be? Do you have to have like a lot of terrain to like for cover and movement, or is it just like you could just put it out on your table and go for it?
You could put it on your table and go for it. I would personally, like, if you don't have terrain, I would just be like, grab a soda can, grab this, grab things that represent it.
Awesome.
Just to get playing. And that's like, I'm hoping to make some little videos like that saying, you don't have to go and craft a bunch of stuff to make it look super awesome. You just need to sit around a table and play make believe.
Now, I know that you're doing a bespoke set of miniatures, but philosophically, Forbidden Psalm is just like whatever miniatures you have to hand, right?
Yeah,
So,
it's a mini agnostic. So is Sqwürmish. I just, the opportunity to get to have miniatures is awesome.
oh yeah, I
So,
mean, of
yeah.
course, like that is totally like, why not?
Yeah. I think I even like wrote that like, and use rocks from your yard if you need to, like whatever it takes to get playing. You don't like, you can even have little glass beads that you number as your miniatures.
Right. Yeah. That's cool. That's very interesting. I just like there's been such a, especially like, having seen the explosion of interest in Warhammer from the 90s to today, it's just like it becomes like this thing that's just like this is a thing that has all of these like folkways and mores and like expensive things that you have to do, and it's
Right.
increasingly elaborate. So like finally actually looking at miniature systems like this and seeing that like no, you could literally use anything to play these games is like cool and refreshing.
Yes. You just need the book with some scenarios and you're ready to go.
Right. And like, yeah, I never even thought about like I've thought about like, oh, I just need, soda cans for terrain or like a rock. But the idea of using like numbered beads, like that didn't occur to me. And I just love that.
I actually, for one of the games, the game, the Vast Grim game that we were running at conventions this past year, part of it is like there's just a swarm of Grim, and so after doing that enough and realizing I could not keep track of one, two, three, four, I took the little blue beads and with a paint marker I wrote one, two, so that I could at least be able to keep track of hit points and stuff on them.
Right. Yeah. Amazing. So I'm looking at the ash can. There's no art in it. It's just like the sample rules, which is really nice. I have to say, as much, especially for something derived from Morkborg, I have come to appreciate the clean systems reference document style that sort of like extreme layout styles has like that's sort of a consequence of that, like just having the nice reference document where you can look at everything. However, it doesn't have any art. So what is the art going to be in line with the rest of the Vast Grim art? Like tell me more about the art, because I love art, and
Yes,
I love the Vast Grim art.
thank you very much. It is very much going to have a very similar feel to the other Vast Grim stuff because I mean, after the core book, I did everything but the editing in those books. So one of the
Oh, I
things
didn't
that's
realize that you do the art.
yes,
You're everything.
I'm a graphic designer by as an old man. That's like what I did from 97 on.
Oh wow.
I turned into a sculptor after failing at comic book publishing and deciding I needed a faster creative release and getting into customizing toys, and that evolved into making big weird monsters. Um, and so yes, so I'm like I hadn't ever done terrain, right? Because I was never a war gamer,
Mhm.
and wow, it's so relaxing and it's so fun. So like for the scenario that's in the black and white version, the Ashcan version, I sculpted or I foam cored and like Mod Podged and paper mached some terrain that I thought looked like weird spikes that were on like planets on the new Transformers 1 movie and also looked like some of my friend Alan Panicle's background art and some of his sci-fi art. And then I crafted this weird tower thing out of bits and pieces from pool filter and other things. So because my Vast Grim art already has photography, like I take photographs of things that I sculpt and then I beat the hell out of them in the computer in Affinity Photo and things like that. I'm taking a very similar approach where I'm making stuff, photographing it and distressing it and doing all that in the computer. But now I get to add Saul's sculpt, like his 3D renders
Cool.
and put those in place of some things that I would normally sculpt because I
Mm.
can't sculpt little tiny stuff and I'm also not a digital sculptor. I like getting my hands dirty.
That's awesome. I'm excited. And it'll have the same basic color scheme and it'll fit right into the rest of the line.
Yep, and the book will be the same size and it'll go great on my bookshelf with all the other titles.
Love it. That's the spines being consistent is a really important and overlooked
Yes.
aspect of this hobby.
I mean, you know, you've been listening to us for years. We are very, very specific in what we do and how we do it because we are men who like order
That's
and
right.
rules.
I want my bookshelf so pretty. And even this is a prototype. It's not the final box, like the die cut's not right, but
Oh,
the
wow.
minis are going to be the same height as the books, so they'll
Oh,
look on the shelf
wonderful.
together. But it can also be turned outward facing so that you can see the figures. The back will have like uh, character pack one, character pack two, because I don't want to pay. Since Saul's making all these, me and my kids are going to pack all these, so it'll be like the old GI Joe packaging where we go and mark off the the line that's in each
so
one.
Oh, yes.
Good. Yes.
Yes.
All right. What
Wow.
a note to end on. I'm so
Yeah.
excited right now.
I don't want to talk about anything else. We're going to go home. So Sqwürmish drops on February 11th on Kickstarter, a vast grim sci-fi skirmish game and miniatures. Look for Sqwürmish with the umlauts over the U. Brian, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you. Where
Thanks so
can
much.
people find you and Vast Grim on the internets?
The fastest, easiest way to find me is briancolin.com. BrianColin.com. That's my little Linktree like page that has links to all my stuffs.
Very cool. So this is going to be running for 35 days on Kickstarter. Is definitely worth your time to check out. And if you are into minis, or if you're into Vast Grim, or you just like looking at cool stuff, definitely boogie on down to Kickstarter February 11th and check out Sqwürmish. So this has been another amazing episode of the Vintage RPG Podcast. Stu, where can people find you on the internet?
They can find me on vintagerpg.com. There's a weekly newsletter that is slowly developing. There's more and more miniature content, and it's going to slowly turn into Stu's adventures in miniature wargaming, I think. So if that's something of interest, you should sign up for the newsletter, because that's not really going to show up on the feed, at least in calendar year 2025.
Very cool. You can find me over on Instagram and over at Blue Sky at John McGuire RPG. I'm actually posting more. I say that a lot, but I'm actually doing it because I too have a Kickstarter coming up for Zine Quest. 321 RPG is putting out a zine. It's called Avon by the Sea. It's local kids versus vampires and other monsters in a sleepy little seaside town in the off season. It's a story I've been waiting to write since I've wanted to start writing, so now I'm finally doing it. Avon by the Sea, February 11th as well. Zine Quest, only on Kickstarter. If you like the show, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. Your reviews really do help other listeners to find us. And if you really like the show, why not become a patron? Patreon.com/vintagerpg. We got a behind-the-scenes look at the stuff that Stu's working on. We got a behind-the-scenes look at the stuff that I'm working on. We have a killer Discord community that we'd love for you to be a part of. It truly is an oasis against the decentralized social media. If you really want to play games with us, the $5 tier, I rip a game every month. I play a different game every month. So if you want to get your feet wet trying out some of the stuff that you've heard us talk about, definitely get in on that $5 tier. Play a game with me. At the $10 tier, you've heard the episode. You know what experience is waiting for you. Stu's West Marches game, which is truly a legacy and brutality at this point. You could also get in on my game as well at that $10 tier. And that is it. Patreon.com/vintagerpg. So for Stu Horvath, I'm John Hambone McGuire. May the dice always roll in your favor. Take care.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to like, review, and subscribe to the podcast. Every review helps other listeners to find us. The Vintage RPG Podcast is a ham-fisted production. Music by Dega West. Art by Schaefer Brown. If you like the podcast, you should also consider becoming a patron at patreon.com.